closer look at the man who's most likely to take the top job. Pyotr Poroshenko's fortune is estimated at around $1.6 billion. He's a very wealthy man. They call him the Chocolate King, in fact, because he owns a confectionery company. He's also got numerous media interests as well, though. Politically, Poroshenko has been on good terms with 3 successive but very different presidents. Some of the key points of his CV, well, he was head of the Budget Committee back in 2002. 5 years later, he became one of the bosses of Ukraine's National Bank. And then in 2012, he served as Economic Development and Trade Minister. Let's bring a World Affairs journalist, Neil Clark, to see what he thinks about the man. Hi there, Neil. Nice to see you in Oxford there, I think, in the UK today.
Hi, Kevin.
This guy is no stranger to Ukrainian politics. It begs the question, then, is he going to be the new broom that so many people, I thought, wanted?
Well, this is only a short interview, Kevin, and we could talk for hours, I think, about the difficulties that Mr. Poroshenko faces. And I think the biggest difficulty he's got is that he urgently needs now to rebuild the bridges with Russia. Ukraine needs a good working relationship with Russia. It's its biggest trading partner. Of course, it's heavily dependent on Russian gas. So he needs to, to go to Moscow and to actually meet President Putin and to sort of get relations back on a much friendlier footing than what they have been. The sort of disastrous collapse in relations. But the trouble is, if he does that, and he needs to do that, then he'll have the hawks in Washington undermining him. And we already had his rival, Ms. Tymoshenko, saying that she's called for demonstrations on the Maidan if the results didn't go her way. And so we could get this situation where he could come under the same kind of pressures as Mr. Yanukovych did. But if he doesn't do that, and if he goes and he follows the line of the junta in the Ukraine and carries on this very anti-Russian policy, that's only going to lead to more trouble in Ukraine, particularly in the east and the south. So he's got enormous problems. And if we add on top of that the fact that the country's bankrupt, we can see that really his job is very, very difficult, if not impossible.
Well, especially with so many people in the south and the east of the country not having even voted anyway. I mean, how representative is he of the people's thoughts, the people's wants?
Well, absolutely, and I think that the big problem he's got is that if he generally wants to do the best for his country, let's presume he does want to do that, then what he's got to do is to actually, if you like, alienate the very people who helped put him in power in the first place, i.e. who toppled the Yanukovych government. I'm talking about the hawks in the west, and I'm talking about the Maidan protesters. Because clearly, if he wants to do what's best for the Ukraine, that means actually reaching out to people in the east of the country who haven't broken away already, and of course dialogue with Moscow. But if he goes too far down that line, as I said, he's going to come under attack from the far right in Ukraine, the ultra-nationalists, and from the hawks in Washington. So he really has got a very hard job, and if not an impossible job, and we can wish him well, but it's going to be very hard.
From what you're saying, it sounds like the job's a kind of a poisoned chalice, doesn't it? I mean, which way do you think it's going to go? From what we know of the man so far, do you think he's going to be making headway to Moscow anytime soon to try and build bridges?
Well, his career is very interesting, Kevin, isn't it? Because he started off back in 2001 or 2, I think, as one of the founders of the party of the regions. He was a Yanukovych ally. And then he turned orange in 2005 and supported the Orange Revolution. He served under Tymoshenko, he served under Yanukovych. So he really is a political chameleon. He's been all things to all people. And you can understand why some Ukrainians thought, well, he's probably the least worst man for the job, because he has played it both ways, if you like. But he's going to have to make hard choices, isn't he? And the trouble is, I think we've got to understand that Ukrainians are being used as pawns, really, by the hawks in Washington, who want to start a new Cold War with Russia. And it's not in their interest, the interest of average Ukrainians. So he's really got to break with those people if he wants to do what's good for the average person in Ukraine. Then, of course, he's got a bankrupt economy. He's got the IMF package, which, the enormous cuts that are going to be imposed. And he's going to get pressure from people who are angry with the way the economy's gone. So I think that the next few weeks are going to be very, very, very important. Of course, he doesn't have control of Parliament. Parliament is dominated by the party of his main rival. So that's another problem that he's got to face. And I think that, to answer your question, really, it all depends what happens in Washington now. Does Washington really permit him, if you like, to build bridges with Moscow? Or do the hawks have their say and carry on this kind of aggressive anti-Russian stance? And so I think the next few weeks are going to be absolutely crucial in that regard.
I see. OK, well, thanks for your thoughts. Neil Clark, there, journalist and broadcaster, joining us on the line from the UK. Appreciate it.